Okay.
Hello and welcome to Bible study. Tonight we're in Genesis again. So let us begin tonight with a word of prayer. Dear God, thank you for the ability to share with friends that are many miles away, but yet we can all be in the comfort of our own house. God, thank you for this. And we ask as we are separate in body, let our minds and hearts be together with you. Speak to us and allow us to learn more about you, learn more of your family, of which we are a part. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Okay, last week we had Jacob and Esau meeting, and it went much better than anyone could have anticipated. And the commentary I was looking at today came to the conclusion that yes, Jacob was more successful, but Esau was really a nicer guy. A little hot-headed, but a nicer guy. So anybody have any questions or comments before we go on to this week's? Anything from the last week or weeks before that you've been thinking about?
I appreciated that you were explaining that, the passage with the wrestling match and the dream that he had, and kind of gave us a perspective on that. That was interesting because Mary and I talked about it afterwards, after the, and that it made sense because many of us, when we're struggling with things, you have those stress dreams too. And your point that maybe as you're tossing and turning, you also wake up like, aching and hurting and whatever, but you helped explain that to me.
Yeah, that is that is my way of explaining it. I don't know if it's the correct interpretation, but it seems logical. So
God's calling.
It's calling to say you straight.
Somebody better answer. Mary. Oh, Molly, set Molly straight. That's so funny.
Everybody's looking around to see who's
not me.
It's me.
Okay. So we are.
God hung up on us.
That's enough. Okay. We are all women tonight. There are no men here. Oh, think of that. That'll come over good on the recording. Okay. We are on end of chapter 3, and we're going to start with verse 33. Chapter 33, Genesis 33. We're going to start at verse 18.
Mm-hmm.
And let's just read to the end of the chapter and then we'll head into the story. So someone would be 18 to 20.
I can do that. After Jacob came from Paddan Aram, he arrived safely at the city of Shechem in Canaan and camped within sight of the city. For 100 pieces of silver, he bought from the sons of Hamor, the father of Shechem, the plot of ground where he pitched his tent. There he set up an altar and called it El Elo Israel. Not sure if I said that right. Yeah.
So Jacob to this point has been a wanderer. I mean, he lived with his father-in-law. He was a wanderer with Isaac. Isaac never owned property. Abraham only bought property when he went to bury Sarah. So Isaac has never, ever been on a piece of land that he has owned. So he buys land now. He is going to settle down. This is after he's coming back to some of the ancestral lands that has been promised to him. So he actually buys land, and he's a landowner for the first time. All right, that's the scene of the story. He is at the city of Shechem, and he pitched his tent with the sons of Hamor of Shechem's father. So Shechem is also the family name. It's the name of the place, the name of the family. All right, so let's read now, starting in chapter 34, verses 1 through 7.
Now Dinah, the daughter of Leah, had born to Jacob, went out to visit the women of the land. When Shechem's son of Hamor, the Hivite, the ruler of that area, saw her, he took her and violated her. His heart was drawn to Dinah, daughter of Jacob, and he loved the girl and spoke tenderly to her. And Shechem said to his father Hamor, "Get me the girl as my wife." When Jacob heard this, that his daughter Dinah had been defiled, his sons were in the fields with his livestock, so he kept quiet about it until they came home. When Shechem's father Hamor went out to talk to Jacob, now Jacob's sons had come in from the fields as soon as they heard what had happened. They were filled with grief and fury because Shechem had done a disgraceful thing in Israel by lying about Jacob's daughter, a thing that should not be done.
Okay.
But him,
that's
is
enough.
that the end?
Yeah, that's the end for now. All right. So we get the picture, but first we have to know when Jacob came back to this land. We talked about how when he met Esau, how old was his oldest son?
You said 14 last year.
14. Okay. So now we have to imagine that sometime, if Jacob is there, he pitched his tent, he buys the land, he moves in. This is a couple verses, but it might be several years. Those couple verses that he settles there. So because Dinah wasn't born till a ways down, so she was just a little girl when they moved. So she has got to be, at least 12 or 13, or maybe older than that. So we're thinking some years have passed before this event happens. So, how many brothers did Dinah have?
11.
No.
11?
Well, at this point, yep, still 11. Yeah,
Yeah.
11 brothers.
She eventually had 12, but he hadn't been born yet.
Yeah. Not yet. We haven't talked yet. So she's got 11 brothers. So what tends to happen in a family when there's one girl and all these boys?
Super protective.
Spoiled.
And really protect, you're right.
Harass her to death, but anybody else that touches their sister. Got all these brothers. So you get the picture, and it's the two oldest sons. So they're out, and they're 6, 7 years older than her. So if she's 12, 13, they're going to be, probably around 20. They're not kids. All right. So this is a pretty awful thing. Now, the commentary writer, I just wanted, I don't know if the guy's still alive, how old it is, but he said, well, maybe after Shechem raped her, and maybe he got all sweet and nice, and maybe she would have wanted to marry him. I'm thinking, really? Really? This guy rapes this girl, and this commentary writer says, well, maybe she'd think he was okay. I don't think ever. I don't think any woman could ever have a part of that if someone violated you and then was nice to you, that you'd ever want to be nice back to them. Ever want to. Anyways, that was my commentary story. All right, so this has happened. Brothers are outraged and angry. And Shechem is going, oh, let me do the right thing. I want to take her as a wife. This is that's the scene. So let's go start with verse 8 and go through 12.
Hamor tried to speak with Jacob and his sons. My son Shechem is truly in love with your daughter, he said. Please let him marry her. In fact, let's arrange other marriages too. You give us your daughters for our sons, and we will give you our daughters for your sons, and you will live among us. The land is open to you. Settle here and trade with us, and feel free to buy property in the area. Then Shechem himself spoke to Dinah's father and brothers. Please be kind to me and let me marry her, he begged. I will give you whatever you ask. No matter what dowry or gift you demand, I will gladly pay it. Just give me the girl as my wife.
Okay, can you see spoiled rich kid here? I took what I wanted. Now give it to me. I'll pay you whatever. My daddy will pay. Come on, daddy. Come on, daddy. Come on, pay for me. Come on. And that's what I get. He's the prince of this land, and he is going to get what he wants, and it doesn't matter. And I want this. I took it first. Okay, maybe that was wrong, but now I want it anyway. We got the scene. So now let's go from 13 through 24.
I can read for you. But since Shechem had defiled their sister, Dinah, Jacob's sons responded deceitfully to Shechem and his father Hamor. They said to them, "We couldn't possibly disgrace for our sister to marry a man like you. But here is the solution. If every man among you will be circumcised like we are, then we will give you our daughters and will take your daughters for ourselves. We will live among you and become one people. But if you don't agree to be circumcised, we will take her and be on our way." Hamor and his son Shechem agreed to their proposal. Shechem wasted no time in acting on this request, for he wanted Jacob's daughter desperately. Shechem was a highly respected member of his family, and he went with his father, Hamor, to present this proposal to the leaders of the town gate. "These men are our friends," they said. "Let's invite them to live here among us and trade freely. Look, the land is large enough to hold them. We can take their daughters as wives and let them marry ours. But they will consider staying here and becoming one people with us only if all of our men are circumcised, just as they are. But if we do this, all their livestock and possessions will eventually be ours. Come, let's agree to their terms and let them settle here among us."
One more.
So all the men in the town council agreed with Hamor and Shechem, and every male in the town was circumcised.
Okay. So why would they agree to this for the spoiled young man's request for this wife that he'd already violated and already taken her as a wife, actually? Why would they agree to this?
Well, they were promised that all the livestock and property and all the other animals would become theirs.
Well, yeah, it would be traded, they would be intermarrying, and so yeah, their daughters would get these great bride prices. Jacob was very wealthy. Sounds like a good proposal. Good job. And they figure, okay, we're going to hurt for a couple of days. We can do this. Sounds like a plan. All right. Let's read from 25 to the end of the chapter.
Now it came about on the third day, when they were in pain, that two of Jacob's sons, Simeon and Levi, Dinah's brothers, each took his sword and came upon the city unawares and killed every male. And they killed Hamor and his son Shechem with the edge of the sword, and took Dinah from Shechem's house and went forth. Jacob's sons came upon the slain and looted the city, because they had defiled their sister. They took their flocks and their herds and their donkeys, and that which was in the city and that which was in the field. And they captured and looted all their wealth, and all the little ones and their wives, even all that was in the houses. Then Jacob said to Simeon and Levi, "You have brought trouble on me by making me odious among the inhabitants of the lands, among the Canaanites and the Perizzites, and my men being few in number, they will gather together against me and attack me, and I shall be destroyed, I and my household." But they said, "Should he treat our sister as a harlot?"
Whoa.
Mm.
Okay. Was this a big city?
Don't know.
I don't know. It doesn't really say, does it?
Yeah, I want you to look at any clues that will tell us.
Well, there was a city council.
The city council, yeah.
I mean, somebody said something about, mine doesn't say that, but I thought that's what somebody said when they were reading.
Okay, but how many people went into the city and killed all the men?
It's two.
Well, it's just the two brothers.
Just two brothers. It couldn't have been a very big city. There couldn't
Yeah.
have been that many men. Because they couldn't have killed them all. They would have been exhausted. It's hard work killing. But what do you think? Do you think there was any way this was justified?
Maybe they could have taken him to the city council and brought up charges or something.
Seems a little extreme to me.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think we have to look at the culture of the time. In your family, if somebody had been raped, how angry would you have been?
Especially if the person that violated her then wants to come all sweet and clean and say, well, I really do love her, and I really, it just almost makes it worse. He's not getting any punishment. And we noticed that Diana is already in the harem. She's already.
That's what I noticed that. I was gonna ask about that because that says that they went and took Diana from Shechem's house.
Yeah,
Dinah,
so
Or Dinah. Yeah,
Dinah.
Dinah, yeah.
Dinah. Thank you.
So they had already made her part of the harem. First he violates her, then he just takes her right into the harem. It's a pretty awful thing. We can't look at it from our culture about that it would be extreme, but
Yeah.
they were really angry.
Mm.
And they got them all, the whole tribe, the whole family is gone. And what happened to the women and children that they carried off? Oh wait, actually, who was it? Who was the one that carried off the women and the children and the livestock and everything?
Simeon and Levi, right?
No, it was not.
The rest of the sons
The rest of okay.
plundered the town.
Yeah, the other sons. So Simeon and Levi just went and killed them all and said, enough, get rid of them. And then the rest of the sons, oh, look it, there's no men defending it. Let's go grab everything. They violated our sister, gave them the right to take everything. That's a pretty, I mean, you can understand the anger.
Sure.
You can understand the mentality of the brothers protecting the baby sister. We can understand the whole scene and their deviousness, that they got them weakened and unable to defend themselves because they're in pain. So it was a pretty difficult thing. This is the humanity of the Bible. When you read these stories, we don't really like them. It's not something to lift us up and inspire us. It's just the humanness of the story, and that these are the ancestors of who the Jewish faith is. Not all good. Nothing. If any of us looked back at our own heritage, we might find some things that aren't so good in our background.
Mhm.
We just don't know what we find. And sometimes there might be good, sometimes there might not be so good. But there's no family that's perfect. There's nobody perfect. And here and now. So going back to the Bible story, Jacob is terrified. Why is he worried? What's Jacob worried about?
The people that are living in that land. are going to see him as, the word in my translation is obnoxious.
Okay.
But trouble on me by making me obnoxious to them. And, you know, we're few in number, and if they join forces against me and attack me, our household will be destroyed. So that's what he's afraid that the other people living around them will hear about this. And
Yeah, he's worried. They finally he settles down. He buys land. He's got his own place. He's made peace with his brother Esau. He's figured out how to get away from Laban. Finally, everything is going his way. He's finally settled, and now this happens. And he's got to worry again. It's not going to be peaceful. It's not going to be good. But the brother said, but didn't he treat our sister as a prostitute? Yeah, but he violated our sister. No? And that's the end. The end of the story. We had every right. Jacob, could Jacob argue with that? No.
It's interesting that his concern is that he's going to be attacked, and like his concern isn't that his children did this and sinned against God, but I mean, they broke lots of commandments. Like they lied, they stole, they murdered. So they were sinning against God. But it's interesting that Jacob's concern is that they're going to look bad and get attacked and overtake, you know. It's just interesting to see kind of his heart isn't, oh no, you know, my children, my family, we sinned against God, forgive us, God. It's like, oh no, our neighbors are going to think we're obnoxious and attack us.
Of course, remember, this is before Moses.
yeah, they didn't have the commandments.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
All commandments.
Still,
Oh,
I agree with you. He was more worried about what other people were gonna think than the fact that
Right.
we're stealing and lying and killing.
The world was kind of a free for all.
Yes, so.
all
They need those commandments.
Right.
But maybe it's all part of the package, because he said, you did all these things, and now everybody is going to see us as those people. They're going to look what these people did in this land. You just wiped out this whole family. So nobody is going to, I mean, so it's a mess. It's a mess. And we're getting near the end of this. I feel for Jacob now. He made a lot. He started off being a trickster and taking and stealing. And then he has been put upon so many times. Laban is gone, all the things that Laban did, and then his wives arguing with each other and being tricked over his wife, being tricked over the flocks, being tricked over everything. And then he goes and he has to meet his brother that he tricked, and he was able to make peace with his brother. And everything, I just think everything's good. And now we're not safe.
He finally bought some land, finally found a place to settle down. And I peeked ahead because now he's going to have to move.
Okay, so let's start at chapter 35. Let's head into 35, and there's some good things in here. Let's go from 1 through verse 8.
I can do that. Then God said to Jacob, go to Bethel and settle there and build an altar there to God, who appeared to you when you were fleeing from your brother Esau. So Jacob said to his household and to all who were with him, get rid of the foreign gods you have with you, and purify yourselves and change your clothes. Then come, let us go up to Bethel, where I will build an altar to God, who answered me in the day of my distress, and who has been with me wherever I have gone. So they gave Jacob all the foreign gods they had and the rings in their ears, and Jacob buried them under the oak at Shechem. Then they set out, and the terror of God fell on the towns around them, so that no one pursued them. Jacob and all the people with him came to Luz, that is Bethel, in the land of Canaan. There he built an altar, and he called the place El Bethel, because it was there that God revealed himself to him when he was fleeing from his brother. Now Deborah, Rebekah's nurse, died and was buried under the oak outside Bethel, so it was named Elon Bakuth.
Or it says Oak of Weeping. Is a
Ah,
translation of
Okay,
that. All right, so Jacob is once again fleeing, and here is this safe place. So what happened at Bethel before? You're all thinking,
yeah.
what happened at Bethel? I'm looking up for you. Hang on.
She's looking up the answer.
I know the answer.
Oh, excuse me.
Okay, chapter 28. Chapter 28, verse 10. Of course, that says.
28. Oh, that's the dream of the ladder ascending to heaven.
There we
There
go.
we go. What?
So that the song "We Are Climbing Jacob's Ladder," Bethel is the place where Jacob had this dream, and he thought that this was like the entry to heaven. This was a holy place. So this is is that the same place that he wrestled with the angel?
I don't think so.
Was that also at Bethel?
I don't think so. That was at the Jabbok River.
Okay, you got that one.
Yeah.
Okay. So anyway, this is this holy place. So he feels, so if you were running away, wouldn't you go to a place where you thought was the entry to God's house? This looks like a good place
Yeah.
to stay. So he's under the protection. And what did God tell Jacob at that place? What was the agreement they had together? You can look back in chapter 28. Let's go back. Let's all go back to 28. Because this was what happened. From 20, verse 20, Jacob made a solemn promise. If God is with me and protects me on this trip I'm taking, and gives me bread to eat and clothes to wear, and I return to my father's household, then the Lord will be my God. This stone that I've set up as a sacred pillar will be God's house, and of everything you give me, I will give a tenth back. So this is where Jacob is asking God to be the protector. If you protect me, God has protected him, given him everything. And so he's going back to this place now, a significant place. He feels safe. On his way there, did he get attacked by these people that saw what a terrible thing they had done to Shechem? We're back in chapter 35 now. Moving you
They
back.
were,
No.
but
Yeah, God spread terror over the people in all the towns, so they wouldn't be attacked.
Okay.
yeah, so they were afraid of him because they'd heard what he'd done. That's what I'm thinking.
So maybe they didn't even know about the circumcision thing. Maybe they just think these two guys went in and fought all these men and beat them. Didn't know that they were disabled at the moment. And they just gone through and killed a whole pile of men and took their wives and children and all the property. Kind of scary guys. We want to stay away from them. So now Jacob is back. What is the significance of Deborah coming up in this chapter? Got any idea?
We've got a weeping oak tree.
Okay. But if Deborah is there, where is Rebecca? Well, who is Rebecca, first of all? Let's remind us. Who is Rebecca?
Isaac's wife.
Who is Rebecca?
One of Jacob's
one
wives.
of the wives.
Ah,
No?
Oh,
Mother.
oh, that's
Who?
right. Oh, that's right.
Rebecca
right.
is Jacob's mother.
Mother, that's right.
Jacob's mother.
Oh, I forgot. Okay.
Yeah, me
Okay.
too.
Remember
late.
the last time we had any recollection of Rebecca, she was sending Jacob away. Go run away. I don't want both of my sons dead in the same day. Go, leave. You can come back in a few weeks when things settle down. How long did it take for Jacob to come back?
A good
After-
long time.
21
You always have the answer.
plus years.
It was, this is when Jacob left and met Laban, worked for him for 14 years for the two wives, and then worked 10 more years for his flocks. So it was 24 years before he came back.
Yeah.
So where's Rebecca?
She's probably dead.
Yeah.
Probably dead. And when we don't get the whole story, we don't get everything. So did Jacob come back to his family home, find out that Rebecca was dead, but Deborah was still alive? So he said, all right, come on, you travel with me, you're under my protection now. Either Deborah came to tell Jacob that Rebecca was dead, or he discovered and then took Deborah into his household. Otherwise, why would she be there?
That's one of
So
those
we-
things that just kind of goes by when you're reading this and you say, okay, well, whatever.
So if Deborah was there, Rebecca was dead. If Rebecca wasn't there, because that was her nurse. That was the one that traveled with her. That was her. The one that left home with her when she went to go with Isaac. So it's been a long time. Rebecca's gone, and Jacob probably gracefully took care of Deborah, who was probably the one who raised him as much or more than his mother did.
So Molly, Bethel, I just looked it up again, is an ancient city of Palestine located just north of Jerusalem. And up until this point, Jacob has been in modern day Jordan, because
Mhm.
that's where that Jabbok River is. And that's, I just think it's interesting that they went back and forth, across the Jordan River, and that's kind of the dividing line. Because now he's being called back into Israel. Wasn't that yet, but yeah.
Mhm.
Interesting.
he's-
I don't know.
Back into the promised land then.
Yeah.
Yep, there he is. All right, so we've got a little pieces here that we didn't look at. So let's go on and let's go from 9 through 15.
I can do that.
Okay.
Now that Jacob had returned from Padam Aram, God appeared to him again at Bethel. God blessed him, saying, "Your name is Jacob, but you will not be called Jacob any longer. From now on, your name will be Israel." So God named him Israel. Then God said, "I am El Shaddai, God Almighty. Be fruitful and multiply. You will become a great nation, even many nations. Kings will be among your descendants. And I will give you the land I once gave to Abraham and Isaac. Yes, I will give it to you and your descendants after you." Then God went up from the place where he had spoken to Jacob. Jacob set up a stone pillar to mark the place where God had spoken to him. Then he poured wine over it as an offering to God and anointed the pillar with olive oil. And Jacob named the place Bethel, which means house of God, because God had spoken to him there.
Okay. Wait. Didn't the angel already name him Israel?
Thought so.
Yes.
Let's go back, look in chapter 32.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Chapter 32. This is just before Jacob meets Esau, the night he's wrestling all night long. And is this in chapter 33? Is this a flashback? Or is this another visit? Or is this a further explanation?
That's what I was thinking. I was thinking this is kind of the official announcement that, you know, he gave him a little preview when they were wrestling during the night. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's my impression when I read this.
Well, when we look at it, it says on his way back from Padan Aram. Where's Padan Aram?
You know,
That's where Laban was.
okay.
Okay.
Because we read later on that all his sons were born in Padan Aram. So when he was, so it said when he was on his way back, this is where God blessed him. He's not on his way back earlier here. He's already come back. Now he's just moving again from this other place. So this is like this little piece that's stuck in here as a further explanation. It's the same thing, but now we have it at Bethel. So that's why I was saying, did God wrestle with Jacob at Bethel? Maybe. It's not all completely, the story doesn't flow completely clearly. There may have been an editing problem.
Mm.
But it doesn't flow together. But anyways, they're at this, so Jacob leaves, goes to Bethel, and then here we get the story, and somehow the story gets put together so that Bethel becomes this really, really holy site. And I believe Bethel became the capital city, like, of northern Israel when the nation split apart. And
I think
Bethel,
that's right.
Yeah.
Think that's right.
so this became a super, super holy place. And of course, even if he wasn't at Bethel when he wrestled with God and got the name Israel, they put it so it happened in Bethel, because Bethel has got to be the center of everything that happens to Jacob.
I just looked up where Padan Aram was, and it was in northern Mesopotamia, or modern day Iraq. That's interesting.
Yeah, that's where Abraham was from originally.
Right, right,
That's where Jacob went to after he ran away from Esau.
right.
So this story, it just kind of plopped in here, and not quite where we want to see it, but it's part of the story. And maybe put in here to make sure that Bethel becomes the holy place. Got to take place there. Everything important has to take place. All right, so Bethel has been, now we see from Genesis, and that might be somebody looking back, telling the story as they're looking back, going, oh, Bethel became the center of everything. We have to make sure that everything important happens in Bethel in this story. And I think that's what we're reading there.
Huh, okay.
All right, let's go on. Verses 16 through 21.
Then they journeyed from Bethel, and when there was still some distance to go to Ephrath, Rachel began to give birth, and she suffered severe labor. And it came about when she was in severe labor that the midwife said to her, do not fear, for now you have another son. And it came about as her soul was departing, for she died, that she named him Benoni, but his father called him Benjamin. So Rachel died and was buried on the way to Ephrath, that is Bethlehem. And Jacob set up a pillar over her grave. That is the pillar of Rachel's grave to this day. Then Israel journeyed on and pitched his tent beyond the tower of Eder.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. This is a sad story. I mean, here goes Rachel just having her second son and dies in childbirth. We don't have any tears recorded. We don't have any grief recorded. The only thing that we really have is the name and how Jacob changed the name. So let's look at the names of this poor little boy. So what does Benoni mean? Anybody have it in theirs?
Son of my sorrow.
Yeah, son of my, son
Okay.
of my trouble, yeah.
Okay, of my suffering.
Mhm.
She knows she's dying, so she names the boy of my suffering. The last thing she could do. Why didn't Jacob let him keep that name?
Son of my right hand.
Downer to have all of his life.
Yeah, he would. But what did Jacob name him? What does Benjamin mean?
Mine says son of my right hand.
And what does it mean to be at someone's right hand?
Favored position.
Okay, there's something that we say quite frequently in church. And sitteth at the right hand
And of the, mhm.
of the Father. So this is the favored position. He wanted this child to be a child of hope, apparently. Didn't want him to be a son of suffering, but one of hope. This is his last son. He probably knows this is it. And this has got to be the child of promise. Now, here's an interesting note. When Israel decides to finally have a king, what tribe is the first king of Israel from?
Benjamin?
Good job, Susie.
Woo!
And Susie, here we go. Follow-up question. Who was that king?
Saul?
Saul. Saul was from the tribe of Benjamin. So there we just a little piece of thing that happened to flow into my brain, and I just wanted to impress you with my knowledge. No,
Well, way to go, Susie, answering.
That's
a
Susie.
question.
Show off.
I think that is, just a piece to say, okay, Benjamin was this child of hope, this child of promise, and promise did come from, but Saul just didn't act it out right. Right. So we've got Benjamin. We leave Rachel along the road.
Oh, gosh.
And it's later on, this is a little spoiler, that later on we're going to find out that Jacob and Leah and I think the other concubines were all buried with Abraham and Isaac in that one cave that Abraham had bought. But poor Rachel is still out on the road.
On her way to Bethlehem, so, there's,
Yeah.
yeah, there's some
Yeah.
significance there in the future.
Okay, so this is really, now we are finishing up the story where Jacob is the center. The next chapter is going to be just a whole bunch of names. We're not going to get to there tonight. A whole bunch of names about the ancestors and who begat who and all that. So this is really the ending story of Jacob, and this is going to be a really sad ending to the story. So someone read from 22 to the end of the chapter.
While he was living there, Reuben had intercourse with Bilhah, his father's concubine, and Jacob soon heard about it. These are the names of the 12 sons of Jacob. The sons of Leah were Reuben, Jacob's oldest son, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, and Zebulun. The sons of Rachel were Joseph and Benjamin. The sons of Bilhah, Rachel's servants, were Dan and Naphtali. The sons of Zilpah, Leah's servant, were Gad and Asher. These are the names of the sons who were born to Jacob at Paddan Aram. Keep going.
Yep.
So
Jacob was really busy.
yeah, really. So Jacob returned to his father Isaac and Mamre, which is near Kiriath Arba, now called Hebron, where Abraham and Isaac had both lived as foreigners. Isaac lived for 180 years. Whoa, baby. Then he breathed his last and died at a ripe old age, joining his ancestors in death. And his sons Esau and Jacob buried him.
Okay. So this is the last real thing we hear about Jacob is that his oldest son goes and incestuously sleeps with his father's wife. Pretty awful. We don't hear anything else about the story. It's just like this happens. So Reuben, we don't know about you. And it just says that things just keep happening to Jacob. Whatever he sowed when he was younger, he just keeps reaping it back and back.
Yes.
All right, then we've got the list of the sons. Now you notice it says, these were Jacob's sons born to him in Paddan Aram. Is that true?
He didn't stay there long enough to have all those sons, did he?
No, he was there. He was there for 24 years.
Oh.
Which one wasn't born there?
Benjamin.
Benjamin. We just read Benjamin was born while they were on the road. So somebody is just, this is another one of these pieces that's placed in there, not necessarily put together. And now this is an odd thing. So Isaac is buried by Esau and Jacob. Notice Esau's name is first. What is funny about this?
What's funny about this?
So it
doesn't-
said that his name was now Israel, but it's never actually says that anywhere other
Yeah.
than that.
Yeah. The funny part is when Jacob was fleeing from Esau, why did Jacob flee from Esau way back when he was young? Why did he flee from Esau?
Because he took his birthright.
Not
And then
the
he
birth,
took
just the
his
blessing.
blessing.
Yeah.
Right.
And he
And
thought he
when-
was going to kill him.
When do you get blessings from your father?
When your father's dying.
Ready to
Yeah.
die. Yeah.
So
How
now
long-
that's interesting. Well, he took
How-
a long time to die, didn't he? He must have been in an opera, because they take forever to die in an opera, right?
So this is
I'm sorry.
That's good.
Go ahead,
Quiet,
Molly.
shut up.
Go ahead, control you.
I'll sing of you. So this was at least 30 years ago.
Wow. I hadn't even put all that together. Kathy, did you figure that one out? I just,
Oh, yeah. You know me with my math. Sure.
Isaac dying 30 years before this. And they put this in this place right now to say, now we know Rebecca's dead. Rebecca was a lot younger than Isaac. This is just kind of put here because we got to have the story in the right place that Jacob and Esau are now okay with each other, that they can bury him together. And it has to be the right number, 180 years. And somebody's trying to mathematically do it. But so if Isaac had died when we think that he probably should have, when he was giving the blessing, Jacob and Esau would not have buried him together.
right.
Because
True.
Esau was out to kill Jacob. And it's very clear that Jacob is meeting Esau for the first time after 24 years have passed. So I don't really have a take on this. I didn't get much in the commentary about it. Let's just see if I got a little piece on this. If I can read to you what. So this is just, it's an odd thing. What happens here? Where do we do it? No, I can't find it right now. Give me a second. Okay, the chronicler is responsible for the genealogies, probably moved Isaac's death to this point because they wanted to fit in a tradition available to them that Isaac lived 180 years, and having had Esau present at the funeral, they naturally had to have him depart once more from Seir. It is much more satisfactory and more in line with the force of the story in chapter 33 to suppose that the two brothers never met again after their reconciliation. We don't know whether they came back, whether Isaac was cremated and they finally buried his remains, which they wouldn't have done. But there's not all, it doesn't all make sense all together. The whole thing.
Did they cremate back then?
No, they would not
I
have.
think so.
Definitely would not have. Not in this culture. They would have buried the bodies. Yeah. So with that little mystery on our hands, I will challenge any one of you to research that and try to find out what happened, but it doesn't always make sense all put together. Because there's little things here goes, don't quite get it. But we definitely want Jacob and Esau to bury Isaac together. Because if Jacob had died, Isaac had died when we think that he did, Jacob would have been out of town. Isaac was mad at him. Neither one of his sons would have buried him. And that would have just been sad.
So maybe it's just put in there to show that they finally did reconcile. They agreed to disagree and went their separate ways, but they did reconcile. They weren't out to kill each other anymore.
Of course, and remember, okay, let's go back a generation. Who buried Abraham? I've only studied that like a month ago.
Here, I have it.
I've been to the Holy Land since then.
Genesis 25, 8. Then Abraham breathed his last and died at a good old age, an old man and full of years, and he was gathered to his people. His sons Isaac and Ishmael buried him in the cave of Machpelah near Mamre.
Thank you, Susie.
So two other estranged sons.
Two other estranged sons got together to bury Abraham, so we had to get them together. So whether it's actually the way the story happened, we don't know, or whether it's just the way of saying that, yep, the brothers reconciled and all these brothers are okay at the end, at least okay to be able to put their fathers to rest. So there we are. There we have it. Isaac is completely done. And okay. So the next chapter, I'm going to give you, if you're up for the challenge, if you have any time this week, maybe an hour, to go down and make a chart of the families, because this is all genealogy. So I dare anyone to try to get this family all in order on a family tree.
Oh my gosh.
I think you're joking.
You look at chapter 36, all it is a genealogy. We have said goodbye to the story of Jacob. We're now going on to Jacob's sons. This chapter is here to just put everybody in their right place in the right time.
Okay, just a note, at the beginning of chapter 36, it says, this is the account of the family line of Esau, that is Edom. And I may have mentioned this before, so forgive me for repeating myself, but I just thought it was fascinating because we keep hearing names like Gilead and Moab and Edom, and they're all in Jordan. And if you're looking at the country of Jordan, in the north is Gilead, Gilead. And then to the south of that is Arman, which is the Amman, which is this capital, but that's the Ammonites. And then to the south of that is Moab, where the Moabites were from. And then to the south of that is Edom, where the Edomites were from. And our guide who wrote the book on all of this, said if you think of the word game and you're looking at Jordan and you're trying to place where these places are in relation to Israel, Jordan is east of Israel, across the river. Then Gilead's in the north, and then south of that is Ammon, and it's, you know, it's a acrostic, is that what it is? You know, G-A-M-E. So it's Gilead, Ammon, Moab, and Edom. Which I thought was interesting because, you know, I've heard these names forever. Trying to place where they were was I didn't really even pay attention. And so now I have a picture, and we have a picture of where they were traveling if you look at a map of Jordan and Israel. That's my 2 cents worth to add tonight.
Thank you very much.
Well, I found it interesting. So.
So anyone makes a chart, and then we'll look at the chart. I will try also, because it's this next chapter is impossible to read unless we really have it in a chart and look at it and go, oh yeah. Okay.
Oh boy.
I'm gonna send it into ancestry.com.
Cheater.
I'm gonna volunteer Nancy to read.
Yeah, right.
Oh, we're still recording, aren't we? Oh, good. Yeah, Nancy, it's your turn.
Or Susie still has to be on and she has to read all those names.
I'm gonna practice.
Okay. All right. Any other questions or comments before I turn off the magic button? Okay.